Back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5. This is Football Saturday. Remember, football on Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. We're streaming the conversation. Listen across the country on News Talk, but also watch us if you like on the digital and social channels for Off the Ball on YouTube, Facebook, the OTB Sports app, and on Twitter. We're joined in the studio by the League of Ireland legend Graham Gartland, and on the line by the former Republic of Ireland striker David Connolly and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward. Join the conversation now on our text number 53106 or on Twitter at Off the Ball. Who's going to win the World Cup now, folks? How bad were England last night? Have Argentina and Germany blown it? Does the success of Saudi Arabia and Japan and Iran mean we as a Republic of Ireland, a support group, should be less defeatist in our own prospects? And do you think all of the stoppage time, people, is a good thing? You can text us 53106. Graham, how is the form?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Good, Graham. Are you enjoying the matches so far?
I'm enjoying some of them. Some of them are like last night's game was a bit of a hard watch at times. Other games can be difficult to watch, but it's the group stages, so you're hoping that it kicks off then when it comes to the knockout phase.
Poland have just beaten Saudi Arabia 2-0. Robert Lewandowski getting the second goal, his first at a World Cup finals. Peter Zielinski with the other goal. Argentina against Mexico in that group at 7. Argentina really need the win. In Group D earlier, it was Mitchell Duke for Australia scoring in the 1-0 victory over Tunisia. France and Denmark kick off at 4 o'clock. Johnny and David, how is the form, guys? Okay, we might have an issue there with one of the lines. We'll get that checked. But Graham, England last night. It seems to me that Gareth Southgate's philosophy is not to lose rather than going to win things. Is that something you'd agree with?
Yeah, I thought they were unadventurous last night. You're waiting for the spark. You're waiting for them to try something in the final third. Didn't see it. Didn't see anybody try and take people on in 1v1 situations. Saka, I thought, was the one. The Arsenal player, I thought he was excellent at times. He was the one that sparked them, but they just didn't probably give him the ball enough. And then very conservative, very slow moving the ball. I understand it's hot. I get that side of it, but the one thing that probably I was a little bit taken aback was when he said, I thought our centre back Stones and Maguire controlled the game, and I actually was frustrated watching them. I didn't think they moved the ball quick enough. I thought they took extra touches when they didn't.
It was a meat and drink performance from Harry Maguire heading the ball, and it was a classic English centre-half performance.
But in terms of being on the ball, Jay, they had a lot of the ball, John, and I just wanted them to move the ball a little bit quicker. They were taking that extra touch. At one stage, he put his foot on it and rolled it back, and I thought, there's no need to do that. Just take touches, punch into midfield, get your midfielders on the ball quicker, and then they can obviously play around the corners and get their strikers on the ball quicker. And you want your good players on the ball as quick as you can, not your centre backs taking probably 2 or 3 touches. And that was a bit afterwards. I was like, I found that comment a bit strange from Southgate. I was a little bit perplexed by it. And then obviously all the English media are jumping on where's Foden, why haven't they got Phil Foden on? But it's players in 1v1 situations that you need on in a team that you're playing against are A, athletic, B, they're willing to run with you as well. USA were willing to run with England all through the game. They were well set up, they were well organised, so you do need somebody that can beat players in 1v1 situations, because then USA have to bring extra cover to that, and that can free somebody up as well. And I just didn't think they'd done enough in moments like that in the game.
David Connolly, hope you're there. How can England go from, I know they beat a distracted Iran team 6-2, but how can they go from that to what we saw last night? Yeah,
good afternoon, guys. Look, I on paper I know that they beat Iran well, and they did, but I always thought playing America, touched on it before the game yesterday. You know, the 2 fullbacks for the States are real flying machines, right? Anyone who's seen Anthony Robertson this season would have known that you know, he's in really good form. I thought he was outstanding for them, and you know, I thought, for example, in the midfield, I thought they were so sharp. Musa was, I thought, outstanding for America. So they played very, very well, and I guess, you know, nowhere near as quick, didn't move the ball maybe as quickly as they could have done. I agree in terms of what Graham's saying about you need players that are 1v1 dominant against sides like that, and then on the turnover, USA were a real threat. So look, it's only second game in. I think you know, it's the usual sort of reaction. However, you would say, I don't know, would you have, if you're the manager, right, you're playing every 3 days, some sides have kept a similar side, but that's probably because they've got 14 players or 12 players to choose from. You know, for England, you'd say the bench is you got another 11 players on the bench who could do a job. Would you freshen it up for that second game? That might be, I don't know, that he might maybe looks back on that he could have freshened it up. Because I think the squad is in, say even when I was playing at Ireland for the World Cup, the starting 11 was really, really strong, and Mick didn't want to mess with it. And I think that was right to do that. But, I think England have got like another 6 players they could have brought in and still be pretty strong and fresh enough for the last game. So I don't know. He might look back on that and say maybe he could have freshened it up. That would be the only thing.
Should he against Wales? Because effectively they're true on the goal difference now, David. Should we see Foden? Should we see even Trent Alexander-Arnold, even though Southgate's unlikely to pick him?
Yeah, it's a good point, because you'd love to see those players, right? And especially when you have to go and make the game. As I say, they've got sort of 20 players, and it's not as if there's only that 11 that can perform. Obviously, the Trent can come in, Phil Foden could come in, Jack Grealish could have started. There's players all over. Calvin Phillips maybe could have started. There's options for them, right? And Callum Wilson. The issue with the tournament is that, it's not an issue, but it's a fine balance if you're the manager with your starting team and changing it with the risk of performance levels. But it's less of a risk if you've got a 26-man squad as they have, or whatever it is, 20-odd, and you feel that they're not capable. Surely any of those 5-6 players could have come in is going to give a similar performance level to the ones against Iran. So maybe that might be the one thing.
Johnny, how are you predicting England's World Cup is going to come to an end with the trophy in their hands, or a lot sooner?
No, Judy. I spoke to Kevin Duggan on OTB AM yesterday. I thought there was an overreaction to both of their games, really. There was an overreaction to the Iran game, because for me, I thought their players looked a bit frazzled in the context of all that they'd had to deal with going into the game. And I did wonder how Iran would actually even play against Wales. But I felt that England in transition, they looked vulnerable with this system. They do look vulnerable, and it's almost like people forgot after the Iran game that they went into this tournament under a cloud form-wise. And I think in a way, the performance last night, if Harry Kane had gotten that goal in the first half, which was a really nice move, and England had gone on to win the game, there might be delusions of kind of quality among the English press and among the fans who eventually booed them off. I think this will give them a little bit of reality check. As you mentioned, the Welsh game it's not that big of a deal. They can kind of maybe experiment a little bit. In terms of the performances of the teams we've seen so far, I'd say England are about 5th or 6th in terms of potential winners. I can't really see them win the game, but I think the game last night showed up that, again, they're vulnerable in transition. They didn't look defensively solid to me, and as the lad said, their play was quite laborious. That system they play as well, it does allow a bit of overloading on the wings. They're very vulnerable to kind of proper attacking threats on the wings, and I just don't think they're all that good, to be honest. I think they're miles behind what Brazil produced against Serbia.
Is he going to shake it up, Southgate? You doubt that he is. Does he have to, for them to have a chance of winning this thing?
I feel he does, yeah. I think he needs to get minutes into players, because you're going to need them if they go late into the tournament.
Does he change the system in any way?
It's weird, because if you go in, like he puts on Rashford as an outside right, and Rashford normally plays off the left for Man United, but if you're going to play Rashford off the right hand side, what happens is Trippier has to come in and play like an inside right, because that's the space that's vacated. And who better to do that than, as David said, like a Trent Alexander-Arnold that comes in and plays in that little pocket, and then he can be creative from that position. So again, putting players on that suit certain positions, like if you have a Grealish on the left, Shaw needs to actually do more in terms of getting round them and being more of an offensive threat as an overlapping fullback, because Grealish is going to come inside and run and get onto his right foot. Foden's different. Foden can go inside, they're outside, but they need more from the fullbacks if they are going to advance. And you see that with does the system allow that, Graham, though? Do you know?
Yeah, does the system allow you to take chances there?
It doesn't, but you can take chances if your two midfielders are able to control the tempo of your game, both in terms of stopping transitions, but also in terms of controlling the game when you're in possession of the ball and giving your team a tempo. The best player probably that we think of in the last 20 years in controlling the tempo of their team as a sitting midfielder was Pirlo. But Pirlo wasn't athletic, but he controlled what Italy done with everything, because he decided to up and punch passes into his strikers, punch passes into his wide players, and got them playing. And if they ever needed to slow the game down, it was him that done it. He wasn't defensively minded, but he wasn't athletic by any means, but he was able to control the tempo of games. And England have never had that control, and the Carrick was probably the last one, but he didn't play enough. So that's, to me, to get these players into good positions, it's not about who plays, it's about can they get these areas filled by better players, and if they're inside left and inside right, or their position in front of the goal is taken up by creative players, they might have a chance. But their two sit midfielders need to be able to control the tempo of the game and stop transitions, like what Johnny said.
David, what does Southgate need to do differently, do you think, if England are going to go really deep into the competition?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's going to be anything, vastly different as much as people might want there to be. I mean, I looked at Spain, right, and you think, right, Spain, I know they had a big victory. They know they're going to dominate the ball, and they play Rodri as a centre back. Like outside of the box type thinking. I don't know if there's going to be anything like that. I can't really see it. I think he's going to stick by Raheem because Raheem Sterling's always done well for him. I think he's loyal to those players, right? Now, there'll be an influence because obviously people ask him about Phil Foden not playing. But, why couldn't Phil... Well, this is interesting because just because Phil Foden hasn't played down through the middle for Man City, say, as a number 10, I mean, he says that, right? I've commentated on Phil playing as a striker against Brighton. He played as a striker in one other game I worked on. Now, obviously, he's not a striker, right? But at the time, Man City didn't have a striker. But Pep played him as a central striker. Like he played Jack Grealish as a central striker. That outside of the box thinking, you're not going to get that, are you, from Gareth Southgate? I'm not saying to play him as a striker. Obviously, what I'm saying is I'm sure he could play in a number 10 position if you have two holding midfield players and three across ahead of that. He certainly could. Yeah. But he said that he didn't want to play him there because he hasn't played there for Man City.
But Man City don't play that system, David. That's you know what I mean?
Yeah, but he has played centrally though.
Yeah, exactly. But again, it's like, and he came through as a central midfielder as a kid. That was what he was. That was his position all the way through as a youth player. Was down the middle of the pitch, like. Yeah,
exactly. So I don't buy that. That doesn't quite add up. And also, just because he hasn't played there for his club doesn't mean you as a national team manager can't play him there. My example being, I know Rodri played it. He played it back for the Spain the other day. I think he might have played there once or twice for Man City. But the point being, in a knockout tournament, right? You need to sometimes be thinking outside the box to get the most from your players with what you see in front of you. You can't prep. The best managers can work out what to do as the game evolves. And so that will be the challenge for Southgate. The further they go, can he evolve and do? And has he got any thinking that's a little bit different? That's outside the box. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not sure. I think he's pretty rigid in his thinking, but. Look, it's got him to the semi-finals before, so you never know.
Le Milos has just won the Carl Gold Cup, formerly known as the Hennessy Gold Cup at Newbury, beating Remastered. So that's the big race of the day. Dan Skelton trains. Harry Skelton rode the horse 9-2 favourite. Le Milos. Johnny, don't know if you were on that one, but Johnny, Wales, I think it's going to be a spluttering halt and an exit from the group stage for them. They were ragged yesterday.
They were, JD. Unfortunately, didn't have the winner you mentioned there. Wowed by Constitution Hill in the fighting fifth.
I didn't see that. Was he good?
He's in the odds on now for the champion hurdle in places. And JD's prediction pre-World Cup that Brazil were the team to lump on, and Richarlison was a shout for top scorer. I mean, that came to light the other night. As for Wales, I watched them in both games against the USA. I thought, the second half they huffed and they puffed and they got a result, but they're an ordinary side. And obviously, I think it was one of the seismic events of the World Cup yesterday. I nearly prefer just to talk about Iran because I thought this was just this completely went way beyond sport and the complexities of how Iran sung the national anthem. For me, I'm a national anthems kind of weirdo in terms of I know a lot of national anthems and I find them interesting, but for the Iranian national anthem, they did not sing it in the opening game against England. I thought the players' body language was really difficult. Yesterday against Wales, it looked like they sang it as a sort of a form of almost counter-protest, and that they sang it without any passion. But the passion that they showed in beating Wales and what it meant to those players at the end, and you have to remember, this is a World Cup in the Middle East. It means an awful lot to these people, even if it's in Qatar. All these Iranian fans, you heard the Saudi fans today and the noise that they made. And, I was getting texts from fans in Iran that, people were out on the streets in Tehran. This is at a time when the regime has probably been under almost as much pressure as it's been under since 1979 in the revolution. And how the World Cup, heroics of the team yesterday will change that is hard to call. Maybe it'll galvanise the people further, or maybe it'll make them forget about their troubles. And I thought it was amazing stuff. Dan McDonnell was obviously at the game. He wrote about it today. I think he was very moved by it as well. And I don't think Wales will be a great loss to the tournament. It's a little bit sad to see Gareth Bale the way that he's playing at the moment and the kind of the dying embers of his sort of faltering career, but that's how it is, and I imagine England will beat them comfortably.
Rujba Sheshmi, an absolute thunderbolt, wasn't it, in injury time from 20 yards out. So it means that Iran, a draw against the USA will be enough for them, it seems, and with the goal difference against Wales, it's fascinating. Does it give us hope, Graham Gartland, that we can be qualifying for these tournaments again? If you're seeing Saudi Arabia winning and playing well against Poland today, even they did lose 2-0, and you see Japan, the way they finished against the Germans and win that game, and now Iran winning, does it give us a bit more hope that international football, actually you don't have to be a Germany or a Spain or a Brazil to be automatically in these tournaments?
It's a double-edged sword. It gives us hope, but we're not there. That's the disappointing thing, that if all these teams are there and we're saying that they're probably not great, but we're not there ourselves, that's the frustrating thing, where you look at these teams and you think we're a better football nation than them, but we're not at the World Cup. So looking at it from that point of view, it's a difficult one, because as David said, like going back to, he's played in the World Cup and how that gripped the nation in 2002 was fantastic, and to sit there, and I'm sitting with my two boys who are at an age and they're not getting to see Ireland play in a World Cup, after what, like I grew up with the 1990 World Cup and the 94 World Cup, and how that inspired us to play football and want to be footballers, because that was the stage you wanted to play on. So it is, but in fairness, if we can just get, I go back to, if we can just get our infrastructure right in this country, I think we can do it. Like, because you see what other nations are able to do when they put proper football and structures in place in a country, and then the players do come through. Wales even done it a little bit, and they got their players through. Gareth Bale, Ramsey and all them, they came through. I think Gareth Bale came out of the Bath academy that Southampton had. They have one in Bristol, Bath University, so he came out of that one, and then eventually he moved to Southampton at 14. So again, if we can put them things in place in this country and make sure we produce players, because we can't rely on the UK to do it from 16 to 18 anymore, so we have to do it ourselves. So we really need to look after ourselves and take ownership of making sure that we qualify for tournaments. It's on us, it's on us as a nation, in terms of the FAI and us as a government, to make sure that we're part of these tournaments going forward.
We had Mark Hinsel on the panel last week, David Connolly, talking about how we're kind of illuminated his life being at that World Cup and playing those games. And for you, I'm sure it's coming to your forefront of your mind now, 20 years on, that you were there and you were part of a team that actually got a bit of momentum and was obviously always unfortunate, and any team loses on penalties, as he did to Spain.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that the two tournaments we missed out on via the playoffs were, I think, probably harder to take, because for the World Cup, for both of them, one on away goals, one by the odd goal. We ended up in a playoff conceding, I think, in the last seconds against Macedonia. So to actually get to a tournament seemed like the hardest part, and then once you're there, I think, with the players that we had at that time, I think that the challenge is, like Graham has touched on, and I've said this before, I got a message the other day from the Welsh FA looking for players who have Welsh heritage who are 12 years old.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't had that from Ireland. But then people say, well, then Ireland, need to focus on the players in Ireland. Okay, that's fine. I understand that. But, there's some players that you might be able to get in your system at a young age who would maybe look somewhere else. But that needs resources, and it also needs a will to go and do that, to go and find these players and dig them out and get them in the system, and get them playing for you, whether they're at, Ireland under 15s, under 16s, can they stay in? Now, I know if you've, the two obvious ones, obviously, as Roy Keane was talking about on telly the other day, your Grealish and your Declan Rice and stuff, I know that you might lose some, but you also might keep some, So, look, I'm not saying what Wales are doing, looking for 12-year-olds in England who have got Welsh ancestry or Welsh parentage or whatever is the right thing to do, but it looks like they're trying.
Yeah, they're proactive.
They're proactive, and they're trying to harness maybe what they've achieved in terms of reaching a tournament, right? Because reaching it is one thing, and then when you're there, it's a separate issue. But, getting the kids in the system, because then you might, even if they don't have a certain loyalty to you, or you think they might be playing the system just to play for you as a country, okay, who really cares at that moment in time? Just get them in the system, look after them, see how they get on, and, they might stick with you. Because in this World Cup, I mean, there was the lad who scored he scored for Switzerland, didn't he? I'm sure.
Yeah, against Cameroon.
Braylon Bolo, yeah.
Mbolo. And, there was Musa the other night for the States. There's so many examples of in this World Cup. There was one that came on for Australia today who I think he fled Kenya, Sudan, went to Kenya, taken in by Australia in 2006. I think it was 11-year-old. Mabil came on as sub today. I don't really think it matters, but I think you got to spread that net as far wide as you can so that, Ireland are in these tournaments and they're using all the available resources. Now, are they using them wisely? Well, obviously not, if you look at history, right, with all the money that's just been wasted and the issues we've had with the FAI. But, hopefully now things are changing for the best, and they certainly should be casting their net far and wide.
Do more for even the player. Like, we had our 14s, say, and our 15s this season had, between them, we had, say...
This is the Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah, say 11 internationals. Probably 7 of them could play for different nations. Like, they're second generation Irish. 3 of them African descent, one of them's Polish. A few more are Polish on the older groups, a couple of Africans. And do more for them. Do more for them and help them to make sure that they stay in the Irish system. Because the other nations are going to come for these. Nigeria are going to come for some of them. Poland are already sniffing around some of them. Do more for them.
And it can happen because Jamal Musiala could have played for England, for example. But Ethan Ampadu could have played for Ireland.
Yeah, exactly, that's right. And then he could have played for England and he chose Wales. But do more for them when they're in this system to make sure that they're looked after. And what can we do? And invest in the player. You don't need to invest in all these coaches and like, again, I'm a coach, but you invest in coaches to a certain extent, but invest in the player. What does that player need to make sure that he comes through to play under 18s for Ireland, to play under 21s for Ireland? Invest in him. How can we help with his education? How can we help with his dietary needs and stuff like that? But we just don't. And again, spread your... David touched on it, like finding players. I know there's a couple of lads from Scotland who have Irish descent that are in some of the squads as well. Ex-Celtic player, his son. There's a goalkeeper as well that's played for Scotland and played for Ireland. But yeah, cast your net wide as well, but make sure that they're looked after to the point that they don't want to play for anyone else.
Yeah,
they're getting the feeling that what it means to play for this country, but they're also getting looked after, that they're thinking, that's where I want to play my football. I constantly want to go and play for these. I constantly want to go to these camps and make sure that if the decision comes to it, that's who they're picking.
Australia, Tunisia, you were on duty for that one earlier on, David Connolly. The Socceroos winning 1-0. Do they have a chance against Denmark in the last game?
I tell you what, they do, but if they kind of play, their side, I think they're very reliant on the lads that are starting. They're starting 11. Mitchell Duke, the big sort of number 9, he reminded me of a Quinney, a Cascarino. They played very direct, but he won an awful lot. As soon as he came off, I mean, they didn't really have any outball. He was outstanding. Not just a goal, just in terms of how they played. What they did is they teased Tunisia. And they went, well, go on then, try and thread a pass. We're not going to press you. Try and thread a pass through the middle. We'll nick it, then we'll break. And also then they played a lot of long balls. And nothing wrong with that. They played a lot of long balls, forced Tunisia back. And then for the goal, Harry Souttar, who I don't know if you know much about Harry Souttar, but he's been out for a year. He did his ACL. His brother sadly died of motor neurone disease only a few months ago. And he's had an awful lot to contend with. He was outstanding. But he played a lot of long balls that pushed Tunisia back. But then for the goal, he dropped one into the front after he'd pushed Tunisia back. And then, it was just a really good team goal. And they've given themselves an excellent chance. But they played the occasion and the sort of and the game, and weren't sucked into altering their style of play, going for the victory. I don't know if that makes sense. So second game, you might think, right, we've got to win this. I'm going to play my ball players. I'm going to play, I'm going to go for it from the get-go. No, they didn't do that at all. They never overplayed. They played deep into the other half, and they played kind of risk-free football to begin with, and then grew into the game. And I thought it was really sensible way to adopt the game, whereas Wales looked like they were in a panic to win the game from the first minute, whereas Australia were kind of in a similar situation, but looked pretty calm and composed about how they went about it.
Leinster are leading Glasgow. I think they've just got another try there. We'll update you in a second. That's at the RDS. This is the United Rugby Championship. So Dave Carney got the first try, and the second try has just come now from Rob Russell. So 14 points to 0. Leinster lead Glasgow. Ross Byrne adding the extras there in the RDS of the United Rugby Championship. Johnny, we have France against Denmark at 4 o'clock here. Just going through the teams. 3 changes in defence for the French. Jules Koundé playing out as a right back. Raphael Varane, Man United defender and centre defence. And Theo Hernandez replacing his injured brother Lucas in defence. Mbappe starts. And then for Denmark, we also got 4 changes. So Mikkel Damsgaard, Victor Nelson, Jasper Lindrum and Andreas Cornelius come in. Thomas Delaney out of the whole tournament now with a knee problem. And Mbappe was something else, wasn't he, the other night, Johnny?
He was, JD. They look a team that kind of could possibly go all the way if the cards fall a bit right for them, just because their threat on the pace, their threat on the break with pace is so great. And Giroud is almost like the perfect foil who doesn't have pace but will score goals, that I think they have a chance. I really do. And they're probably, if you look at England might play better in games when they're subservient in terms of possession. And England do have a bit of pace on the break as well. But I think France will be better in that regard. And Mbappe was amazing. As much as we give out about the World Cup, there are so many narratives involved in it, and Mbappe is one of them. You just see what he's achieved at his age, 23, already kind of, what he's achieved at this point of his career and what he could go on to achieve, and the way he played the other night was phenomenal. I thought, to be fair, their shape was good. I thought Kanate looked quite solid. Maybe they coughed up an early goal, but I thought Rabiot played really well. He's a flaky enough character, you'd have to say, but for France he seems to have it all there. They're obviously missing Pogba. They look really good. I think this will be a good test for them. Denmark will be better than Australia, and I think it'll be a fascinating game. But I am narrowing it down, JD. Officially, it can only be won by...
This is official now.
It can only be won by Spain, France or Brazil. And you might say, well, that's very, very obvious. But even if you put that together as a bet, I still think it's a little bit odds against. I have to do my maths on that. But nobody else can win it. Am I wrong?
So you've narrowed it down to 3, basically. That's not very narrow. It's like
32 left.
I've narrowed it down here to 3.
But it's official.
I think France have a chance. They're going to cough up chances, but that pace they have, and Mbappe, I think Giroud's going to get plenty of goals as well. He looks like a man on form, and I definitely give France a chance. It's
interesting because for to do your continuing learning with the licenses and stuff, that we were doing a course with this SFA, and there was research into the Euros, and France were one of the teams that didn't press. They were one of the teams that went into a medium block rather than a high press. And one of the reasons that the coach who was analysing it gave was because it saved Mbappe's energy for when they won the ball back, so that he could be more electric on the counter-attack. But it wasn't that they set deep and brought teams onto them. They like a medium block was like, they dropped off a little bit, not too much. They said, right, try and play through us, similar to what Dave was talking about Australia. But once they won it back, then it was they sprang the likes of Mbappe, Dembele and these boys that had pace, but they had the energy then to just play in bursts. And with Giroud staying centrally, he occupied the centre backs, and we were talking about what England lacked in terms of 1v1s. When you get Mbappe in a 1v1, he's gonna rip you, like, because he's really good. So he has that pace that he could just rip by anybody, and that's what. It was interesting that France adopted that, where most teams were talking about playing a full press. France went, no, we're going to play a medium block. And this year you can see similar in that they're just dropping into a shape. They're saving Mbappe's energy for when they win the ball back and then they explode. And I agree a little bit. I think France, out of the European teams, France would be the one that I think have the firepower. Them and Spain.
Are you going to make a declaration like Johnny Ward?
I'm going to narrow it down to probably Brazil, Argentina, France and Spain. That's a little bit.
You've one more team. You've one more team. David Connolly, do you want to make a declaration here?
Do you want to narrow it down to 6 there, David?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd probably, do you know what? I'll be controversial here, and I'm going to rule Argentina out, whether that's controversial or not. I know it's only one game, first game. I saw so many flaws because I worked on that game, and like pre-game, looking at them in-game, and then afterwards, saw so many flaws in their team that I thought, well, you know, can they really win this World Cup? I mean, they're a side that's not blessed with pace. You just spoke about France there. You know, you tell me in Argentina's side who's got pace. It's quite astonishing. There's nobody in that starting team that has got any pace. Di Maria is you know, a player who is a top player. I mean, we're critiquing, right? Well, the World Cup here. So these are incredible players, right? But let's compare them to who they're up against, which is exactly what we're doing. Your France and players like that, and your Spains or whatever. You know, Di Maria is not as quick as he used to be, right? And he's lacked an awful lot of football of late. He's on one side. Lautaro Martinez is not quick. He was caught offside about 10 times. It looked like, you know, he just encountered offside. I mean, it was quite incredible, good defensive line. I mean, Lionel Messi, he's quick, but he's not as quick, and he drops very deep. Tagliafico, left back, not quick. I mean, it's a side that is got a few flaws that, you know, came to the surface in one game. Now, they might be ironed out, but I don't think you can put pace into a side that doesn't have it. I think Alvarez will probably start, and I think he is a really good player, and I think that we're better with him in the team. But yeah, I thought Argentina were really, really disappointing, and I think they've got an awful long way to go. I know it's only one game, and you can recover. I think there's only Spain that have done that, lost their first game and gone on to win the World Cup.
And West Germany in 1974.
Yeah, but forget putting that to one side, just looking at the specifics of those players that they've got, Argentina. Compare them to, they're not a particular ball possession team like a Spain. You know, they're not a counter-attacking or got the pace that a France has. So, yeah, I mean, look, they're incredible players. Don't get me wrong, but I think they've got a couple of flaws there, and also he maybe selected the two centre backs in the wrong positions, because when he brought on Lautaro Martinez, he had to shift one across and take out Romero. And it was almost as if he just got his starting team wrong, and how costly maybe that would be. So they're better with, they're better with Martinez, Alessandro at the back when he came on in that left centre-back role, but it meant sort of Otamendi then had to shift over to right centre-back when Romero came off. So, look, this is a World Cup, and Argentina are making mistakes on the biggest stage in their very first game. And I think the team that ended was a much better team than the one that started. But boy, is that a costly mistake. Really costly.
Yeah, I got it wrong. West Germany lost the third game of the 1974 World Cup. They lost in the group stage, but they didn't lose the first game. But here's the trivia question. Who did they lose to in 1974 World Cup? They won the tournament. Who did West Germany lose to in the group stage?
Didn't know there was group stages back then.
Anybody?
That was just a shock.
Anybody got the answer?
No.
Johnny?
No.
East Germany.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
See, they don't even exist anymore.
They don't even exist anymore. We're going to take a break here on Off the Ball Saturday. Back after this Football Saturday. And welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5 this evening. This is Football Saturday. Remember, football and off the ball brought to you by Sky. Watch all the football you love, including the biggest Premier League games every weekend live on Sky. We're joined in studio by the League of Ireland legend Graham Gartland, and on the line by the former Republic of Ireland forward David Connolly and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward. Leinster, another try, 19-0 now against Glasgow. Rob Russell with a second of the game. So do you think Argentina could struggle against Mexico tonight, David, given what you said before the break?
Yes and no. I think if he starts the team that ended the game with Martinez and Otamendi, the two centre backs, Alvarez as the wide man, I think they'll be a lot better. But I think they're not going to win the World Cup, or I'll be amazed if they reach the semi-finals. I mean, that's considering they're second favourites and I hadn't lost in 36 games. But, I am basing that off one 90-minute performance where they were, to me, showed, as I said, just a couple of flaws in there and weaknesses in their team that, other sides maybe don't have on their day. So I think they'll overcome Mexico, but I still think they're going to find it tough to overcome maybe your Frances or your Spains of this world. So not as technical in terms of possession, not a possession-based team, and they're not as quick on the counter as the likes of France.
Yeah, we have rugby union going on today. I just mentioned the Leinster game there. Wales 20 points, Australia 6. So Wales having it easier than we did. And we also have Racing Lampresse just won the rehearsal chase at Newcastle. And a bit of golf news as well. Leon Maguire is going well in the Open d'Espagne. And Tom McKibben finished 3 over today, leaving him in a tie for 4 under to fall back to 29th position. So Leon Maguire is playing at the Ladies Open d'Espagne. We'll come to that in a moment. We just got text in here on 53106. Lads, fine and well treating young lads well at 18 and under 21 level, but how do you though prevent a Rice and Grealish happening again, says Marco. John, this World Cup is about high energy being used to bridge the skill gap between the so-called big teams and the underdogs, says Michael in Dublin. Seriously, I can't believe Ireland never approached Kane in his early years. Father from Galway, says Dermot. Well, I don't know.
Surprised Johnny wasn't on that one.
Yeah, Johnny, why didn't you bring Harry Kane to Ireland?
Galway has made such an imprint on the Irish international team. What do we had? David Ford, Darrell Horgan. I have to say, I found that debate really, really intriguing that the lads were having.
Yeah, go on.
Well, we went from the team of 88 and 1990 to, Jack getting 2 for the price of 1 when he's trying to pluck a player with Irish heritage. Like, that's effectively gone now. The stats that Graham Gartland gave you there are absolutely staggering. I mean, and the influence that, immigrants have made in this country is just phenomenal. You go to a hospital now and it's like you see how important newcomers are to this country, but the influence that kids have had as second generation Irish, as Graham says, I'd be more focusing on that challenge that Graham was alluding to, ensuring that these sort of homegrown players, Ireland under 17s, JD, either last year or the year before, Ireland under 17s had 3 players from Albania. Like 3 Albanian, basically Irish-born Albanian kids are of Albanian heritage. So Rocco Vata, Kevin Zeffi, and Justin Ferjai. Albania is a tiny, tiny country and probably has very few, Albanians in Ireland. And that just shows even Albania, our DNA has completely changed. And in England, when there was that book out, Why Do England Lose? If we had a book out, Why Don't Ireland Qualify Anymore? The reason we're going to get better is partly and possibly even largely because we have all these kids now that Graham says, what did you say, Graham? 7 out of 11 could play for the country.
We had 7 internationals that were capped this year on the 15 level, and 4 of them could play for different countries. Then you look at the year above, we had 5, and I'd say 3 of them could play for different countries. So that's 7 out of 11. IK Ozari was another one that played a year up. He's an under 16 international, but he played under 17s, and again his father Mark is from Nigeria. So we've got a lad that got capped this year. He has an issue with his passport. They're trying to get him sorted, but he was born in Italy. He's of African descent, and I'm thinking Italy are going to come looking for this boy. you know.
And I think even great, like the thing, like it's funny. Even Evan Ferguson, like his mother is English, right? So, but the thing is, and this is really at the heart of it. When you look at other nations, JD, and what it means to them, we have Gaelic football, we have hurling, we have rugby, but it's probably more so the second generation Irish are far more inclined to play football than any other sport, if that makes sense. And I think that's partly the reason. But it's a fascinating time for football, and we're going to be far better for it.
53106. Man United are going to be the richest club in the world. They deserve it with 1.2 billion fans worldwide. They're going to be unstoppable, says Pat in Waterford. Does he know who's buying it? I wonder. Hi lads, I know it's early in this World Cup, but why is Messi so poor in World Cups? No real zip to his play, says Sean. There is a suspicion that he's injured, or he's got some kind of injury at the moment. And to be fair, Sean, in 2014 he did single-handedly almost bring Argentina to the final when they lost to Germany in extra time. Brazil, Graham, discuss. Yeah, Neymar's out of the rest of the group stage. Is it, in a way, could that free them up? Because Neymar, I know he got fouled 9 times the other night, but he does take a lot of energy out of the team in ways.
Yeah, and sometimes they can carry him a little bit without the ball, but with the ball, he can spark them. It's interesting because I was listening to. They were discussing Brazil on the way in, and that they're not as reliant on them as they were probably going back to Russia in 2018.
No, definitely not.
And they've changed their team, and they've made him, and he feels that they're not reliant on him, and the pressure's off him a little bit, and it frees up other players. But I thought they were really good. I thought the second half, when they wanted to turn the screw, they did, and they had. Richarlison's goal is brilliant. It's one of the moments that you get off your couch, and I was sitting on it with me 2 boys, and they had Brazil jerseys on, and they were cheering it as well.
Were you doing the overhead on the couch in the living room?
Me 2 boys tried it as well on the floor, so it just shows you the influence it has on them. Like it's massive. And
I watched the replay about 1,000 times because I
don't think he means the first touch now. I think it's just a reaction.
It just happens in the blink of an eye. Yeah. That's what really amazed me about it. It just like it's in the net before you even.
Yeah, the power he gets on it, and the improvisation he takes after. I think, like
that's
I said,
such an instinctive. That is Samba soccer stuff.
Yeah,
that's from the Copacabana.
Like, he reacts to the fact he probably takes a touch that he doesn't want to take, and then he just swivels on it. And like you said, the power he generates on it. And in fairness, my wife jumped up because her mother is actually in Brazil at the moment. They were at a big festival, and they sent a video, and they're all just going ballistic. And then the music kicks off, and they just dance. And then the other
it's only a group game.
Yeah, and then the other goal goes in, and it's the same, and it's a proper carnival.
They're obsessed over there,
and they don't listen to the commentary. They just have the the music that was in the airport ad. You know that.
Yeah.
On in the background constantly, and they're all just dancing.
I think we're all in the wrong place, aren't we?
Yeah, I know, and I'm looking, and our mum's up that the mother-in-law's still dancing at her age. I'm thinking fair play to her, and it was great. And then my boys again, they're jumping around trying overhead kicks, and it's that influence they have on them. But they were really good. Like again, they have control of the game, but they have players that individually can hurt you as well at vital times. I think their goalkeeper situation, I think they're the best 2 goalkeepers in the tournament.
Okay.
I think I worry about France's goalkeeper for touching on that. But I thought they were really good.
Graham Gartland here with David Connolly and Johnny Ward. 53106 for your text number to get in touch with the show between 4 and 5. Folks, Richarlison, that was pretty special, wasn't it, the other night? But what is your favourite World Cup goal? What was the best World Cup goal you've ever seen? To me, it's obvious. It's Maradona against England in 86, the second goal. But you might have a different candidate. 53106, text us your favourite World Cup goal. We're going to chat after the news on Football Saturday here on Off the Ball on News Talk. And welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5 this evening. This is Football Saturday. Remember, Football and Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. You can text us 53106, tweet us at Off the Ball. We're streaming as well. You can listen on your radio across the country on News Talk, but also watch us if you prefer on the digital and social channels for OTB Sports app, for Periscope and Twitter, for YouTube, for Facebook. And we're joined in studio by the League of Ireland legend Graham Gartland, and on the line by the former Republic of Ireland striker David Connolly and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward. We were asking listeners out there for their favourite goal from a World Cup after Richarlison's wonderful overhead kick during the week for Brazil. Steve was in touch with David Platt versus Belgium 1990. Last kick of the game, ball drops over the shoulder. The type of game England usually lost on penalties. Graham Gartland, do you have any candidates? Maradona's the obvious one in 86, but...
I loved Roberto Baggio's goal against Czechoslovakia in the 1990 World Cup, because there wasn't many top goals in that. It was a really dull World Cup, but Kevin Sheedy's goal against England was fantastic. But just memories of, like, they were my generation of goals, where the 94 one, I remembered Romario scored a cracker on a half volley, a little comes in, I think it was against Sweden, where he just controlled a little half volley into the bottom corner, and I thought his technique on it was fantastic. And then you go into Stoichkov scored on with his left foot against Mexico, and that I remember just being obsessed with Stoichkov and Romario at the time, because I think they had just destroyed United in the Champions League as well. You remember?
Yeah, was it 4-0? Was it?
Yeah, and they were fantastic. But Stoichkov hit one front post, and Campos was in goal for Mexico, and just them memories of just growing up, seeing players do things that you could only dream of. They're the reasons you wanted to play football, like, you know.
5-3-1-6, next best goal after Maradona's got to be Bergkamp versus Argentina 1998. Technical perfection, last minutes of a quarter-final against the mean defence in the sunshine of Marseille. A beautiful goal, says Brendan in Dublin. And Thomas and Sligo, Robbie Keane versus Germany. Remember trying to recreate it in the schoolyard after watching it in school.
Yeah. What would yours have been, David, when you were like you would have grown up watching the 90 World Cup like me, or the 94?
Yeah, well, no, I think the first one was 86. That was the first one for me. And it's the obvious one, right? But obviously Maradona would be. Look, Dennis Bergkamp's one against Argentina was outstanding.
Yeah.
Michael Owen's one.
Yeah, that's right.
Also, that was a brilliant goal. But it was the 86 World Cup for me, and obviously Maradona's goal, which interestingly I actually went to see Maradona's shirt. It was auctioned recently.
That's right.
By Steve Hodge.
But no, I played with Steve, right?
Right.
Steve came to Watford, and obviously he did very well swapping their shirt, because I'm sure at the time he probably had no idea, or maybe he did have an idea because he kept onto it for an awful long time. But yeah, I think eventually it sold for 7 million. But I didn't intend to go and see it, but I was just walking past where it was on show, and I went in and actually had a look at it. And then a few days later, it.
But a few of the England players had refused to swap. I think they'd walk by him and not asked because of the handball incident.
Well,
Peter Reid had mentioned it.
Yeah, I mean, and also, I don't know if you heard the other day, but this will happen, right? Where I think Australia, a few of the lads tried to swap, and they gave their shirts to the kit man, and the kit man went into the France dressing room, and apparently Mbappe. So I said no. So kit man came back still with the Aussie shirts, and was like, "Well, no. I'm sorry, but I tried."
Well, everybody now is wise to it, you see.
Yeah, exactly. But So, but for me, it would be Maradona. Certainly when I
scored 5 goals and got 5 assists in that tournament.
Well, the most important thing was the assist for Burshag in the final, because Mateus marked him out of the game.
Yeah, it was
ridiculous. The goal against Belgium as well.
Yeah,
the balance, where you never fell down. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
It was, but like the goals that you remember, they're the one. Like you got the Panini book, and
well, this is the inner child in all of us. That's why I think a lot of us are upset about the whole way this has unfolded in Qatar, because it's juxtaposed with the way we should feel about World Cups and measuring our lives in World Cups. By the way, have you seen Steve Hodge recently, David? He's not going around in a Ferrari or anything, is he?
I saw him. I think I saw him at a game. He was working at a game. It was, you know what it was? I think it was. It was. I can't remember the game, but he was working for radio or for TV. But. Yeah, I didn't see a helicopter land, but maybe it did. I'm surprised. I'm surprised. He's still going out working after that. But yeah, there we go.
Yeah, another texter there, David Dublin, Bergkamp against Argentina and France. And hi guys, the best World Cup goal, David Leary's penalty against Romania to put us into the quarterfinals, is Gavin, the Donegal man in Cork. Well, fair play, Gavin. I suppose the one we've all forgotten, isn't it? Johnny Ward, do you have anything there?
I'll give 4 goals.
No,
all involving
officially.
All involving.
We'll narrow it down to 4 goals.
After saying, you know what I think, and here's a wild one. I think the favourites, second favourites, or third favourites will win the World Cup. But the 4 goals I give all involve Argentina. I can't remember Maradona in 1990. I do remember Scalacci, and I remember being heartbroken. But this is going to be a strange one. Maradona's goal against Greece in '94.
When he shouts into the camera.
the reason, and I suppose you remember the goal as much for the the celebration afterwards, but that for me, the emotion of seeing Maradona come back, and so I would have been 11 years of age at the time, and Maradona, it was almost like Maradona is back. This is going to be amazing. Now, obviously, it wasn't amazing at all, and he subsequently failed the drugs test. But that goal for me at the time was like, because I don't really remember 1990, was amazing. Maxi Rodriguez's half volley, that was against Mexico. That goal was unbelievable watching live at the time. Dennis Bergkamp's goal that we already mentioned, and the final one I'm going to give is actually Pavard's goal. He's not playing today, I think, but Pavard's goal against Argentina was an utterly sensational goal as well. I think just on the goal that Richarlison got the other night, I was in... I'll have to ask Graham this. Now, maybe Graham is going to book the trend here. There's going to be like somebody with Brazilian heritage, because we've a hell of a lot of Brazilians in Ireland. We don't seem to have many Brazilian second generation footballers. But the other night, JD, I was in Thurles at the races. I came back and I dropped into the circular bar in Rialto on the way back, and every seat was pre-booked at about 6 o'clock, and I literally couldn't get a seat. And I was like, I just said to the barman, "What is this?" And he said, "The whole place has been booked out by Brazilians." Right? So I was like, okay, I've had a long day. I'm actually going to have a quiet pint. So I went on to the Bird Flanagan instead, which is another pub in Rialto, and there was a guy at the bar, and he was watching the game, the Brazil game, and in the first half, and he was kind of giving out. And one of the lines was, he said, "There's no mystery in the World Cup anymore. When I was younger, you didn't know the players. Now you know all the players. But for me, that Brazil performance was so utterly amazing, and I don't see Brazil play very often. It did bring back the inner child in me to see how good this Brazil team could be. I thought they were amazing, and Richarlison's goal must have, prompted so
Johnny, how don't you remember the 90? Like I was 83. I was born 83. How don't you remember the 1990 World Cup? Like I couldn't.
I was 7. I remember.
So was
Scalacci, I. I remember Scalacci, and I kind of remember the Romania game, but I don't remember. I don't remember much of Maradona for some reason.
I remember Maradona because Brazil had battered Argentina in the quarter-final, and Maradona broke in the last minute and ran through, and he played Canizia through on goal. I remember being up for Brazil and being heartbroken that Brazil had been knocked out, because Brazil were really good in 1990, but Maradona just takes the game, takes the ball, runs at them. Canizia makes an unbelievable run, he slips him through. But yeah, I remember like Sheedy's goal. I remember Packy Bonner kicking the ball long. I remember Hulla scored a great 1-2 against Ireland. How don't you? Like that was what started it all off, really.
But I'm sure, Johnny, then maybe 94 is very vivid for you.
Oh yeah, and in fairness, the victory over Italy was this fact that you dare to dream, because I was, as I kind of alluded to there, 1990, I was a little bit too young. I was fully grown, infatuated with football by 1994, and I remember the devastation of the Dutch game and just the goals we gave away, and thinking. And funny enough, JD, I mean, we were getting to World Cups. We were the only team in the British Isles at that World Cup, weren't we? So it was like, we felt it was like a matter of course now. We're going to get to World Cups, regularly, and now it just seems like that was just an amazing time. But yeah, I just remember the absolute euphoria of Ray Houghton's goal, and then the whole thing kind of dissipating. The terrible game against Norway, the heat in the Mexico game, and just the sheer deflation of that game against the Netherlands, and I guess not realising at that time that was the beginning of the end for the Jack Charlton era.
David, see the way you're obviously of Irish descent, you've Irish family in the UK. What was your family like around Ireland World Cup in 1994 as somebody living in the UK? Because obviously we're in Ireland, we're right behind it, but what was it like for the Irish people living in the UK, considering, as Johnny said, England didn't qualify?
Yeah, I mean, geez, that was a long time ago. But in those days, in my household, it was the World Cup football was one thing, but my dad and my whole family were hurlers and Gaelic footballers. So to be honest, every weekend we were at a hurling. We were somewhere. We were at a ground somewhere. Now I wouldn't be playing hurling. I'd be with the second generation kids playing football.
Yeah.
But all the dads would be playing hurling or Gaelic, and at that time, that was all. That was kind of my weekends were spent at GAA grounds. all over the country, or mostly in and around London. That's how it was. But I grew up in sort of Willesden, beside Kilburn, which was, I think it was called like the next county outside Ireland, like County Kilburn. I mean, at the end of the road we had an Irish shop. All the neighbours were Irish. Everyone went to the Irish pub, or after the game, or hospital.
Were Catholic clubs a big thing then?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And that was it. Was all of your friends were Irish. Everybody was Irish. That's how it was then. As it is now. Like, I've got two sons, an 11 and a 13-year-old. Who would you play for? I say to them if they were going to play football. One says England, one says Ireland. So for these sort of, they're now of the generation of growing up in England, but they haven't been going to Gaelic games. They haven't been. I'd spend every holiday in Ireland.
Yeah.
I never went to another foreign country. I think I went to Spain once. I probably went to Ireland every year till I was 16. That's how it was, right? But my kids now, like you're talking about lads who are from, different Eastern European countries playing for Ireland. My kids now, they might have more of an affinity to the country where they were born, more so than where their ancestry was. So that's the kind of.
Did you have an option, David, to play for England or Ireland? Was it?
It is. I don't know. It wasn't. If I was watching football on TV, I'd be supporting Ireland. It was just the way it was. Yeah. It never even entered my head to. It's different. I never had any other passport apart from an Irish passport. Nowadays that would be different, right? For my kids, it might be a bit different. Whereas when although I'd be like a lot of second generation, born in this country, but I'd probably I did consider myself Irish to all intents and purposes, because my whole life revolved around Ireland, to be honest, apart from I kind of lived in England, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and people might not know, David, your late father, Tom, played for the London hurling team, and in 1973 they beat Galway in the All-Ireland Championship.
Yeah, that's right. And the irony of this is, right, staunchly Irish, my dad, but staunchly proud to play for London against Galway, where he was born and where he wanted to be buried there, but he was buried in England. But next to my mum, who was also buried in England, although they're both Irish, and But yeah, the Gaelic games was a massive part of our lives, of my father's life and our family's life. Completely dominated. Yeah. A lot. That was something else. I think they reached the minor final. They one of the most decorated hurling families, brothers in that's ever played for London. But let me tell you, when it came to it, fiercely competitive. No problem playing Galway, and we'll beat them. I think they lost to Limerick or whatever.
In the semi-final, yeah. In
the semi-final. So that it brings it back to this. There's been the ultimate sport. Ultimately, it is about loyalty or whatever. But you're there. Your will to win will kind of take over everything, right? And even where you're born, maybe he had no problem beating Galway and would beat them, every day of the week if it meant that's what you got to be to compete, right? So that was interesting. It
was the Brian Boru's club in London.
Yeah, Brian Boru's, yeah. And there was some great hurling clubs and Gaelic clubs in those days, St Gabriel's, and there's so many to mention. There were it was a huge part. And there's a lot of second generation lads that Peter Gain, I think he played for Lincoln in the end, but his dad was a hurler. Kevin Maha, who's now obviously doing really well at Southend, he'd be in and around. His old man would be playing Gaelic as well. So there's a few lads like that,
Great story, Johnny, isn't it?
Yeah. Apart from beating Galway, Johnny.
Yeah, I have to say I wasn't actually aware of that. That's definitely a quiz question on many levels. Connolly, obviously a name synonymous with Galway hurling. David touches on something there that on one level is a sign, I suppose, of the economic transformation of Ireland in recent years, but it's a little bit sad, and I witness this when I go to both London and America. Like, my father would tell me that he was born in 1943, and in the 50s, mid 50s to late 50s, he would say literally the whole village, like 2 or 3 villages around us, all of the kids were gone. I mean, they were gone to England. They were gone to England to get work, and that's where, you know, a lot of them married. That's where a lot of them settled in the likes of Birmingham and Coventry and London, all that. Prior to that, my grandparents' generation would have gone over to the States, to New York. And it's great that, well, we could argue that a lot of today's kids actually do have to emigrate, but in the sense of the economic success we've had, it's a little bit sad that the London Irish, the English Irish, the communities of the Irish over there, and the same in America, it's kind of dying out. It's not a thing as much as it was anymore, where it was such a special community that the likes of Kevin Kilbane would have been brought up in, and David Connolly would have been brought up in, where the Irish sort of stuck together. They had their communities, and there was a real unique kind of identity over there. And I think both in Britain and certainly in New York, I would say with my cousins, it's just the one generation passes and it's just not really a thing anymore.
Yeah, Andrews Christensen there given a yellow card for pulling down Kylian Mbappe, with France 0, Denmark 0 after 20 minutes of the game in Qatar in the World Cup. What did you make of Brazil the other night, David Connolly? Were you as impressed as Graham was?
Well, yes and no. I mean, look, I think they're supremely talented. I think a lot of conjecture, right, about Richarlison, whether he should be the number 9. But if you'd have watched him in qualifying for the last couple of years, I mean, he's been banging the goals in for fun for Brazil. So 2 great goals. I'd agree. I don't think he intended the first touch, the lefty, to pop up. Ideally, you'd want to kill that if you can. But he's like a throwback, I think, Richarlison, because, you know, you were just talking about the say Brazil 94 team or whatever, 98 team. A lot of their centre forwards and their goals would come in different ways. But with Richarlison, he can, you know, he's aggressive. He can outmuscle you. He can beat you in the air. He can score like reaction type goals, like predatory penalty box stuff. He can also score elaborate goals. He can finish quickly. There's a lot to his game, which, you know, we haven't really seen in England as a central striker. But like, you know, for Brazil, we say, I'll tell you a quick story on that, because I played when I was in Holland. I used to, if I was injured or if I had an issue with my insoles or my boots, I'd go and see someone in a different part of Holland, and he recorded you running, and you just saw the bottom of your legs on the video, and he'd say where you're going wrong and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, he had to rewind the tape, and when I said, "Oh, have a look at this fella," so he pressed play, and you've never seen 2 legs, well, you know, bandy legs, bowed legs. I've never seen 2 legs like this, you know, running up and down. And he said, you know, any idea who that is? And I said, no idea. But I mean, geez, you know, how could someone play football with them? He must need some pretty heavy insoles to sort them out, you know. And so the camera panned up, and it was Romario, you know, and Romario played at PSV. Yeah. And so, like, you know, it's like, wow, that was Romario. Yeah, that was Romario. He's still, you know, in those days, 90, I don't know, whatever that was, 90, I don't know, late 90s, maybe early 2000s. He was still going back to Holland to get these sorts of insoles into his boots, you know. But what a player. I mean, and I guess you associate Brazil with those greats. Is Richarlison a great like a Romario or a Ronaldo? I don't know. But is the team as strong as other years? I'm not so sure. But I think they're probably going to be one of the favourites. Don't know if I would have them as winning it. I've got to be honest, but I think they'll be like there or thereabouts. But I wouldn't have them as certain favourites. Maybe no, I wouldn't have them. I think maybe I might be going with one of the European teams. To
Spain,
be honest.
France,
possibly, yeah, above Brazil. As impressive as they were, don't get me wrong. But what I do like, I love that they come to the you know. I guess with Ireland, right, we've grown up with, you know, Roy Keane being very stern, stony-faced, not a smile, and you think that's the way to win. And I quite like that Brazilians have a different way where they're playing a tambourine and they're singing and they come into a stadium and they can still be world champions. You know, I like that there's always a different way to do things, that you don't have to have this fierce intensity like a Gary Neville in the tunnel, staring people, not smiling, you know, the intensity. I think it's great in football that there's always a different way to win. And, I like that about them.
That's why it's so cultural, isn't it? Like, you're bringing your culture to the World Cup.
Yeah, exactly. And that's good, right?
Yeah.
There's no one way, and I like that.
And the apex of that was the 1982 team, which played the game as it should be played, but then they got beaten by a defensively minded Italian team that had a brilliant striker catching fire in Paolo Rossi. So there you go.
That's one of those that used to be played on Eurosport. Remember, on the replays all the time, Socrates scores an unbelievable goal down the side as well. The
Danes are dishing out some treatment to the French here in this game as second booking for Denmark. Andreas Cornelius. It's France 0, Denmark 0 in the World Cup in Qatar. Pretty much even possession wise after 24 minutes of that game. We have also Leona Maguire through 17 holes now, 12 under par at the Open d'Espagne on day 3. She's only a shot off the lead. Held by Morgane Metro of Switzerland. So Leona Maguire in the hunt there to win that tournament. Wales 20, Australia 13 is the latest score from the international that's been played this afternoon in Cardiff. Leinster 21, Glasgow 0 in the United Rugby Championship. 2 tries for Rob Russell, the other for Dave Carney. That's what's going on there at the RDS. So lots of sport going on in terms of the racing. Constitution Hill was an easy winner of the Fighting Fifth Hurdle, and we also had the big race at Newbury, formerly known as the Hennessy Gold Cup, but it's now called the Coral Gold Cup, and Lemilos, the 9-2 favourite, won that. So plenty of sport going on elsewhere. We got Graham Gartland, David Connolly and Johnny Ward on Football Saturday between now and 5. You get your text in here on 53106 just to go to the break with a couple of them. Loving the show as always, guys. Firstly, though, Ireland is not part of the British Isles, and secondly, as a second-generation Irishman, I completely identify with David Connolly's experience, having grown up near him in Alberton, Wembley, and captained the London under-21s in Croke Park, says Eamon and 2 Mile House. And I've watched every World Cup since 1970, Brazil 1782, magical teams. Brazil 82, still my favourite team of all time. Maradona goal versus England, the best goal ever, says a different Eamon on 53106. We're back after this. Back to Football Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through to 5. This is Football Saturday. Remember, football and off the ball brought to you by Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. You can text us 53106. We're joined in studio by the League of Ireland legend Graham Gartland, and on the line by the former Republic of Ireland striker David Connolly, and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward. 53106 on the World Cup. Cambiasso for Argentina versus Serbia in 2006, an amazing team goal, or Marco Tardelli for Italy in the 82 final, if only for the celebration alone. Great show again, lads, says James in Waterford. Thank you, James. We're asking listeners their favourite goals at World Cups. We also have got to be Carlos Alberto versus Italy in the 70 final, best team goal ever, says Jerry. Another texter saying that as well, Tim. And we have, lads, what about Van Persie's diving header? Pure class, says Matt. David Connolly, Ronaldo is leaving Man United. He scored for Portugal the other day against Ghana. Wasn't the most complete performance, but they've got a lot of talented players. Can they go far?
Yeah, they can. But, they've got the players to do so. Whether they will or not, I don't know. I think they kind of got away with it. That result against Ghana could have easily slipped away, ironically, if it wasn't for a slip. But, maybe they I don't know, if they'd have left Kudus on, maybe Ghana might have had more of a chance of getting something more out of the game. It's almost like, he made the changes too early. But, I think it's a wonderful achievement for Ronaldo. Scoring in 5 World Cups is just incredible. It's clear he had to leave United, and probably could have been done a lot sooner. As it is, it's done now, and I think both parties can move on. There were worrying moments for them towards the end. I don't know, are they as strong as previous Portuguese sides? Yeah, they probably are. I mean, certainly the midfield and the top part of the pitch is really talented. Bruno Fernandes, João Felix, obviously Bernardo Silva, Ronaldo. I mean, they're incredible players. Have they got enough to compete with the very best in this tournament? Not quite so sure, but you wouldn't rule them out. But I'm not quite so sure. It's unlucky for Ghana because I thought they came really, really close.
Johnny, one of the interesting features of this World Cup is the amount of injury time. Sean Ingle in The Guardian was reporting earlier this week, and it hasn't stopped, that the average time of the first 6 games was 106 minutes and 12 seconds. I wonder, is this going to change how football is played if this continues into European leagues?
It might do. It's funny how World Cups are often used as, this kind of like guinea pig to try something new. I've never seen this before. And was it? Remember the golden goal back in the day, and they threw
the silver goal.
The silver goal. It's like, but why are you trialing this at the World Cup? You're not trialing at some two-bob like pre-season tournament. And like, what was the first? Was it 24 minutes in the Iran game, the Iran-England game? I think 24 minutes combined, and that was it. I mean, they may even have played more. I've mixed feelings on it. I think it's too long, to be honest. I think Graham might disagree with me on this. It's not so much the letter of the law. It's the fact that the actual game itself now is too long, because you're effectively playing for the guts of 105, 110 minutes, sometimes in a 0-0 draw. I've mixed feelings on it.
Why would you think I disagree with you on that? That was a random. I think Graham might disagree on that. We've never had a conversation about injury time. I don't know where you got that from.
I think I may have mixed you up with someone else, Graham, actually. Somebody was like, I guess it cuts out like if you're applying the letter of the law and throw-ins and free kicks and all that, but at the same time, like, it's sometimes now you're looking at 9 minutes and you're like, do I actually want 9 more minutes of this?
I think when teams are starting to run down the clock and just be silly, and it can ruin the game when you have a team that's chasing. It can ruin the game. So if they know that, if it's a deterrent for that type of behaviour where teams are taking extra long over everything, and then the ref goes, right, well, here's 10 minutes at the end. I might stop that. But again, you're right, Johnny. Like, why rolled it? There was no dialogue on this before the World Cup.
It just happened. I didn't expect this to happen.
Yeah, it wasn't like they said, listen, if you start wasting time, we're gonna add it on here. There was nothing. It just happened.
It just arrived.
The first few games, you're like, why are we into the 104th minute here? What's going on? And that's where I like you said, the fact that they just landed on you in the group stages without any dialogue or discussion to say just watch out for it. Because if you are telling teams, listen, there's going to be added on, pretty sure teams are going to hurry up the game and do it right and make sure. Yeah, there's always going to be an element that they're going to hold on to the ball and they're going to take the time over things. But if it's to the point where it's ruining the game and they're adding it on, great. But again, have a discussion about it before just throwing it in.
France 0, Denmark 0, but France on top.
Who scored the first golden goal ever?
Was it Laurent Blanc?
No. Ever in the history.
Was it of the World Cup or generally?
Just in general.
I didn't know even if it was outside World Cups. Go on.
Damien Duff. Malaysia.
All right. Oh, okay.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. There you go. 1997 Under-20 Championship. David Connolly, the Germans, can they pull this out? They got Spain tomorrow, and Spain could put the stake in the heart of them if they win that game tomorrow night.
Yeah. I mean, just on the extra time, I'm a fan of it.
Right. Why?
I'm a fan of it. I tell you why, because I think with VAR and the substitutions and all the stoppages in the game, I think you have to try and claw it back. And I think Kalina did say, the referee did say before the tournament that they were going to try and take into account all those stoppages. And I think if you are going to keep going to the screen for VAR, etc., and I think you got to, right? Because if I'm playing at a World Cup, if I'm a player, and this might be my one and only time, or whatever it is, I'm a manager, whatever, I want to make sure that I get the amount of the game time that I possibly can to get on that pitch. If I'm a sub, I want to get on. I don't want to lose 5, 6, 7 minutes of it, because they're not taking into account all the stoppages. And the games are only, I remember playing in games, right, and we get the data after a game, Prozone data. Against Stoke, the ball would be in play 38 minutes out of 90, whatever it was, right? And that is factual. And then you play other teams, very good teams, and the ball's in play, 60 minutes or whatever. And that might be a surprise to some people.
Yeah.
At a 90-minute game, the ball is only in play that amount of time. Now, and all this stuff about looking after players, this is a World Cup. The players are well looked after anyway. And I'm sure they can stretch through another few minutes. And if they can't, well, it's once every 4 years. I think this should be how it should be, to be honest. And I don't want to lose any time. If I'm playing a game and I can score a goal, I don't want to lose a couple of minutes of it because, we can't have games that are 100 minutes or 110 minutes. Well, if there've been stoppages for that amount of time, why not? That's what I think. Why not? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I want to get that time back.
Kylian Mbappe just missed a really good chance to put France in front against Denmark in this World Cup game in Qatar. Goalless at the moment. Denmark drew their first game against Tunisia. France beat Australia. Australia won today against Tunisia by a goal to nil. If you're only joining us and you didn't know, Poland beat Saudi Arabia 2-0. We got Argentina against Mexico at 7. The Germans, David, can they pull this out and maybe get a result against Spain tomorrow night?
Well, I'm not so sure. I mean, it's interesting. Luis Enrique said he's going to change. He's going to make some changes right after the 7-0. And I don't think I've ever repeated a lineup. I just like I don't know if you've seen Luis Enrique, but he's a mad cyclist. Have you seen him? He's been out there with his top off. I mean, he looks like he could still play. I really like him. Whether they win, lose, or whatever, I like what he's doing for Spain. If he is going to change things up, maybe Germany could get back into it. Maybe they could, maybe get a surprise, which you would say a bit of a surprise result against them. But I think the cushion of Spain's 7-goal win, and probably with the games that they've got after that, you'd probably say that they could afford to do that. I think Germany are under massive pressure to try and get a result here. Maybe if it's a really changed Spanish side, they could do, but I'm not so sure they can.
53106, he's wrong. Euro 96 was decided by golden goal in the final. Germany.
No, but it's the first ever one. They've won that when they trialled that. Damien Duff, I was watching a clip of it, and his dad said he scored the first ever golden goal in Malaysia.
Maybe a FIFA tournament. 8-er goal against Brazil, for Brazil, USSR 1982. Brilliant skill from 8-er and a Brazilian team that played incredible football. Deserved to win a World Cup that year, says Ronan in Kilkenny. Johnny Ward is also a keen cyclist like Luis Enrique. And Johnny, anything else that's catching your eye over the week? Maybe the coverage, the Roy Keanes, the political situation, any performances like Japan that have really excited you? What's catching your eye? And
well, I guess it's strange how football can do this to you, where you're pining for the underdogs of Saudi Arabia, who are playing for a country that is far more dislikable than Qatar. You're actually pining for them to beat Argentina because that little part of you still wants the underdog to win. And that was a strange part of it. I think that got so much... I think it was called possibly the greatest World Cup upset of all time. Maybe that's true. I don't know. I think they were like 25-1. But to be a goal down, and all the VAR situations and all that. I think for me, JD, you spoke with this at the start. The inner child in you. It's that conflict between knowing what's so wrong about this World Cup, and for me it's not even so much the Qatari sort of human rights situation, because no country is perfect. It's the fact that so much money has been spent on this, where I think the legacy of it will be nothing compared to the 214 billion or whatever that was spent in a country that is effectively made up of Indians and expats, that has really, really small local population. That's what, like, I think is the greatest waste here, and how corrupt the whole thing is. But then to have that challenge by, as you mentioned, Japan, Saudi Arabia, and even I really just think that Iranian victory over Wales, if as much as there's so much going on there, that really does tug at your heartstrings. And that performance of Brazil to me the other night, I'm just dying to see them play again, if that makes sense. I'm dying to see this Brazil team play. I haven't seen any team with the pace of movement that they have, the smile on their face, basically living to all the stereotypes of the old Brazilian teams, and ultimately hoping that England will fail and believing that they probably will.
Yeah, it's interesting because the allegations of corruption, it doesn't seem to be touching the radar of a lot of fans from like South America, from other countries, from Asia. It's not even on their radar. It seems to be very much a focus of Western Europe, and the associations coming out, like the Germans, threatening legal action over the One Love armband and all that kind of thing. So there's an interesting geopolitical. The plates are shifting with Infantino meeting MBS again at another World Cup, sitting beside him for the second World Cup in a row. Will Saudi Arabia win the 2030 bid? Cleverly going in a kind of a multi-association bid with different Europeans.
Do you know what I was thinking?
Yeah, Greece and Egypt.
If you look at the Saudi fans and say the Iranian fans, and forget about Qatar, if you look at these like Iran is a football crazy country, right? The Middle East, it's a fantastic legacy for the Middle East, in theory, to have a World Cup. But what country would you actually put it in and say, yeah, we can put it in? What country in the Middle East is even remotely ticks the boxes? And then you remember, World Cups take place in the summer. So for the World Cups to take place in the Middle East, it'd be very, very difficult for it to take place any other time other than basically now. And then you have to put it into a country that's not entirely reprehensible, not left with many options.
Yeah, the grotesque thing for me of this whole thing, and it's the cognitive dissonance and the fact that you can have many thoughts at once. You can have a thought that you're loving what Richarlison's done and you watch it 10, 20 times. But it's like the armband thing is important and all that kind of thing. But it's the fact that this has been built on the deaths of human beings, building these stadiums, and we're having enjoyment out of it. There's something very, very dark about that. That we're having enjoyment of a spectacle that's built on the deaths of human beings, 6,000 of them, according to human rights groups. There's something really, really bad about that, you know. So Wales 34, Australia 13 in the rugby. Leinster have got that bonus point against Glasgow in the URC at the RDS, and the fourth try has come from the sub Michael Milne. Leona Maguire has done so well in the last few weeks, and she shot a 70 today at the Open d'Espagne. Ahead of the final round, she's 12 under par, 2 shots off the lead, in a tie for second at the moment. France 0, Denmark 0. Into stoppage time at the end of the first half. It was Tunisia 0, Australia 1 earlier on, and Poland 2, Saudi Arabia 0. In terms of any of the teams we haven't touched upon, David Connolly, like we're looking at what, Morocco, Croatia, Belgium, any of these, like Canada. I don't think that's the strongest group.
Holland.
No, I mean, I don't know. If you look at, say, Holland, I mean, we touched on, say, earlier, Ireland not being at the World Cup. You've got to remember, Italy aren't here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so getting there is the hardest thing. Probably Holland are getting a lot of criticism from in Holland.
Deserved?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, look, Louis van Gaal is not really one to deviate away from on how he got them qualified, which he's sort of stuck with this back three. He's, was pretty forthright about certain players not moving club in terms of then affecting them actually playing at the tournament. And they didn't move club and they haven't played. So, he is a controversial kind of character. But you'd have to say, I thought Ecuador were really good the other day. It took Holland till late to win 2-0 prior to that as well against Senegal. So, are they going to improve as the tournament goes on? I mean, I don't know. I think it's going to be. I just wonder how far. Look, they'll probably beat Qatar, right? But how far they will go in the tournament, it's difficult to say. I mean, there's no doubt Cody Gakpo is a real star, right? I mean, he is a real star, but I don't know. Last 16 for Holland, maybe. I think that might be. Maybe would they sneak the quarters? I'm not so sure. 53106 and on YouTube comments, local punter has been in touch about favourite goals. Got to be Robbie Keane against Germany 2002, the school sports hall, limbs and chairs everywhere. 20 years ago, woof. And Patrick Cairns on YouTube, 1990 Oman Biak winner and only goal versus Argentina. This was Cameroon.
It's a uniquely Irish thing. Did you get to watch football in your school when you were younger, David, in World Cup 90 and World Cup 94? If there was a game on during the day, would you wheeled out a video? And
I don't think so. Can't. To be honest, I can't remember.
It's an Ireland thing. Yeah,
the Welsh schools this week allowed their kids to watch the Iran game.
Yeah. I think they did watch it at schools. My sons watched it at schools, but on without the teachers knowing.
Even qualifiers.
Michelle, 1989, Spain against Ireland, the own goal. We watched that in school. We were preparing for school plays. We're all in our costumes. Watching Republic of Ireland beat Wales at the windiest Lansdowne Road, 1-0, and it helped us to qualify for the 1990 World Cup. Johnny, I know they had the channels, probably only 2 channels, but do they have did they wheel in the TV in Galway when you were young?
Even the terminology of wheeling in the TV, and every time I've heard this described, it is literally my childhood. They wheeled in the TV, and I don't know where the TV was the rest of the time, because we only had 3 rooms in the entire school. If it were wheeled into our room, where else was it for the other 99.99999% of the time where Ireland weren't playing an international at 3 o'clock at Lansdowne Road because we didn't have floodlights and they weren't on it. And I honestly remember the buzz and the fact that you actually sort of learned something in school that day because you were so motivated by the prospect of watching Ireland. And my abiding memory of that time, JD, was you always felt under Big Jack, you always felt Ireland were going to equalise. You always felt that they were going to make whoever they were playing against, that it was going to be a draw, or they were going to get a result. And you always felt something was going to happen even after they went 1-0 down. And it was literally, I mean, imagine telling a kid we wheeled in the TV now. He'd be like, "What are you talking about? We mount them on the ball these days."
We Air School, in fairness, they used to wheel them in for the qualifiers, like, you know. Remember the Northern Ireland game that was on during the school at home?
Oh yeah.
And they wheeled it in, and you're like, here we go. And then another class would come in, and I think it was the teacher's way of just having a relax. And you were like, they'd sit with it and be like, you know, what do you think of him? And I'd be like, yeah, good player, or yeah, like him. And you'd end up having conversations. And then I remember one of the teachers went to the return. I think he got a programme for me for the night Alan McLaughlin scored.
Right, in Belfast.
Yeah, Belfast. And he came in and he knew, like, your football daft, and he says, here, got your programme.
Still have it?
Somewhere in the house, yeah.
Very good.
A few old Barnsley ones, but
okay.
Yeah, it was great, like, you know.
Johnny, who's going to win the World Cup?
They'll probably wheel Graham out now to the school just to show like what ex-pupils can become. You know, if you put your mind down to it, you can become a League of Ireland great and off the ball. Who's going to win the World Cup, JD? Spain.
We'll ask you this next week again. You might have changed your mind. David Connolly, who's going to win the World Cup?
France.
And Graham Gartland, who's going to win the World Cup?
I'll have to go Brazil.
And I'm going to go, I've got the casting vote, I'm going to go with Brazil as well, lads. So David and Johnny, thanks so much for speaking to us this afternoon.
Cheers, lads.
Pleasure.
And Graham, thank you so much.
Pleasure, John.
And we got to leave it there, folks. Don't forget Off the Ball back tomorrow from 1 to 7. Joe Malloy's here on News Talk in the chair. The legend that is Brian Kerr will be live in studio to talk about the World Cup and tonight's match between Argentina and Mexico and all the games we have as well tomorrow. Dion Fanning and Sarah Donovan will join us for the Sunday paper review. We'll also hear from Patrick Harrington, Brian O'Driscoll. We'll get the latest from the GA Club Championship. Be sure to join us tomorrow for all the regular updates and some great conversation on the show. If you missed any of our Saturday panel on the Women's Australian Rules Grand Final, which is in the early hours of tomorrow morning between Brisbane and Melbourne, Irish players involved in that. And what life is like down under with Bree Stack, Aisling McCarthy and Mike Curran, or any of OTB Football Saturday with David Connolly, Graham Gartland and Johnny Ward. You'll be able to find the podcasts of our content on the OTB Sports app, or you can listen back wherever you get your pods. So in the World Cup today, we had Tunisia 0, Australia 1. We had Poland 2, Saudi Arabia 0, and France 0, Denmark 0 at half time. Tomorrow, Japan against Costa Rica at 10 o'clock in the morning, Belgium against Morocco at 1, Croatia against Canada at 4, and Spain against Germany at 7 o'clock. So plenty to look forward to on tomorrow's show. Thanks for listening this afternoon on your radio across the country here on News Talk Today. We will speak tomorrow at 1. Bye-bye.